Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for joining our session today. We are here to enable sales with better product demos and have a discussion all about that. My name is Kimara Moodley, and I work for DemoStack as a senior account executive. And I'll hand it over to you, Matt, for your introduction.
Yeah, thanks, Kimara. My name is Matthew Bigelow. I'm the Senior Director for Global Revenue Enablement at a software company called WalkMe.
Awesome. So let's kick it off. I think one of the biggest things that's kind of running through my mind is even though the demo is the most important part of the deal cycle, it seems like until recently, sales enablement leaders haven't really taken ownership over this piece. We often hear it's kind of in limbo between product, R&D, and sales, and there's no real owner. What made you want to prioritize the demo as a sales enablement initiative?
I think because of the exact reason that you just described. There's a lot of different opinions out there about whether or not the demo is the most critical part to making a sale. But in my opinion, it is. And I don't think it happens just one time. I think exposure, at least to enterprise software and demonstrations, need to happen early and often. What I wanted to be able to do, though, is make sure that demos can connect to value, right? Generic demos, if they worked, if they sold, if they made people want to invest significant amounts of money into enterprise software, we would just upload those pitches to YouTube and sit back and watch people, send seven-figure contracts to all these different enterprise software companies.
Yep.
But the reality is that exact same demo needs to be customized to what you're learning from the person about what they're trying to solve for their business in the B2B world. So where I saw an opportunity with demo experience platforms being in revenue enablement, not being in sales engineering and no longer being a sales director here at our organization, I saw an opportunity to make sure that the types of people, the types of buyers that we talk to, they could see the art of the possible as it's relevant for them. And we no longer have to say things like, imagine this and imagine that. We don't have to say it as often. I think it's really helpful if someone is in human resources, that they're going to want to see how our technology or any other technology out there applies to other people in human resources. That exact same solution might also be good for a support team, right? And we're going to have to speak to them in a slightly different way. So I think to leave everything to chance, if you really are in revenue enablement and you're focusing on actually helping people do a better job of solving clients' issues and therefore making money for your organization, to leave the part where the customer is going to imagine their future state to other groups or other departments where that's not their expertise, kind of seems foolish, even though you do see it so often.
That's so true. I'm thinking so much about the value side of this and to your point, showcasing value to the folks that you're speaking to. And it's very different today. I was definitely trying to do this before, but it just ended up being many, many phone calls for me trying to talk about value to the different people that I'm speaking to within my sales process. And so I think this piece would really help in terms of an enablement initiative.
Absolutely. It's been a critical tool to making sure that the things that we're coaching on don't just sound theoretical, but they actually have some practical application.
Yeah, I like your point about getting rid of the imagine if statement. I would love to be able to do that. So that's awesome. What were the biggest challenges for your sales team that they faced in terms of giving a great demo?
I think it, again, circles back to that customization piece based off of the use case and based off of the persona. Right. So the product that we sell, and I won't go too in depth on it because I know we're here to just discuss tools and systems and how people are using them in the enablement space. But our solution can be many different things to many different people. And I think what we found is people trying to customize what they're seeing on a screen in such a way that they think and they hope would work for a person in that industry or in that persona. But I view my job in revenue enablement as A, making things really easy, and B, removing friction and roadblocks for salespeople, right? So I don't have a quota over my head. So therefore, I have time that they don't have. I should spend the time to do the research, to look and understand about the buyers, the personas, and the industries. And we're not going to have a demo for every possible buying persona under the sun, but we can at least narrow it down to some of the top do the homework for them. And instead of having them moonlight 10 minutes before a call and trying to change things around or think about it, we can give them some static training resources that they can review at their leisure and say, this is how our product is valuable for these particular types of folks in general. And then from there, they use their dynamic abilities to use discovery to go just that extra level deep on the value. And that's where the sales rep comes in. But we're launching them from a much better place than they used to be.
Oh yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And also, if you've done all that work and all of the research to figure out what are these use cases and personas and messaging that you really want to put out there, it's so much easier for scale as well, for even your reps and all of the sellers that are out there that are actually talking about the product, for them to learn and be able to push that same message when they have back-to-back calls without doing so much research. From an enablement.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, when you said scale, I mean, scale really matters the way that most of us as SaaS companies, and there's a broad audience here, and I think we all share something in common, but definitely any of the folks in SaaS, it's really all about growth up until you reach a certain level of maturity.
Yeah.
And being able to grow is synonymous with scale. And the only way to scale is to figure out a process and a system of things that work in general. And then, of course, there's other components. There's maybe some RevOps people here as well, and some marketers tagging along. There's a component of every business to make sure that you have enough pipeline and avenues to create pipeline for the business. Then you have to understand what your close rate is, and you have to understand what process can get you to that close rate. And then it becomes a simple math equation to hit the kind of growth targets that people want to reach. But there's something that's missing in there, which is the process, right? Many of us, I've been guilty of it early in my career, click on things I shouldn't click on, sometimes in demonstrations for the first time. The last time you should do that is on a call.
Me too. I'm guilty of it. Totally.
We've all done it, right? The nervous clicking, or like, we know that this is how we do it every time, but like we show this thing, right? And we don't even know what that thing is because it's in beta, right? It wasn't meant to be demoed in the first place, and it distracts you from your flow and all that kind of stuff. So process is only as effective as its guardrails, is the way I would put it. I guess that's the way I'm thinking about it. And that's how I see demo experience platforms, right? If we have very good understanding that showing things in this particular way as it relates to this persona in this industry makes sense and get us to a close rate that we find is reasonable, and we're helping enough businesses solve their problems that they win, we win, company grows, being able to control as many variables as possible to make sure it's delivered the way, it'll never be 100%, but like 80% of the way you want and the way that we know works is really, really helping scale. And I think it's helping anyone who's working in demo experience tools on scaling simply by just putting up guardrails. Like, that thing over there, customers care about that in, let's say, year 3 or 4. Let's not talk about it now. And up until these controlled demo environments, we just hope that they didn't do that. And now these days we can control a lot more of that.
We talked a little bit about customization and data. I'm finding that people are often struggling with showcasing value of analytics and charts and data being really hard to manipulate, especially in a demo. And you don't want these types of things to fall flat and kind of get people to disengage from the story you're trying to tell. Is this something you faced?
Absolutely. I think when we have an analytics component to our product, and simply put, if you're talking to a small organization and the numbers in your analytics are reflective of 100,000 person enterprise, they just naturally don't feel like and support them, or will. Unfortunately, for us, we know and support everyone. And we make sure that we have specific departments where that all their focus is customers of a certain size and customers of a certain industry. And we take tremendous pride in that. So it's quite a shame to have an analytics platform that is very powerful, that could really help a small business show numbers that makes them feel that this might not be the right solution for me. And then to rely on just try to imagine. We come back to that place, right? On the other side of things, human resources is used to seeing large data sets because typically with your digital workforce type of tools, most HR tools are used by everyone inside of the organization.
Mhm.
So they're used to seeing data at a very large scale. So even something as simple as being able to say 100 users or 10,000 users and showing that inside of the application, all of which is completely a capability of a production product, but having the right numbers for your call can make all the difference. What happens to us, Kamara, oftentimes, I'm sure it's happened to me more times than I care to admit. I hope it hasn't happened to you, but sometimes we start saying something and they're polite on the other side,
Yep.
but they're thinking that's not for me. And then we talk, unfortunately, probably longer than we should. And they're still stuck over here. So nothing that we said next is there. So someone might say, you know what, this seems like this is for larger companies than what we're used to, and then perhaps they start to think it might be, I can't afford it, right? And it's
Mhm.
unfortunate because there's an option for everyone with certain levels and details.
Of course, yeah.
And if we just had the number of users that they're used to, they'd say, oh, clearly this is going someplace good. They work with and care about people that are companies, pardon me, that are the same size as us, and they must have, therefore, a price point that can accommodate my specific needs, which are smaller than that of an enterprise. That little difference is the difference sometimes in a demo between someone actually listening to what comes next or not. And what comes next could have been so important.
Mhm. It's almost like you can really pigeonhole yourself if you're not showing what makes sense to the audience.
Yes.
Yeah. You said something actually pretty interesting when you commented on, will you be able to support it? If they're not seeing the correct information or things that would make sense for their company, whether it be a company of their size or their persona. And, it kind of makes them question whether it will be something that will work long term. That's interesting. It's an interesting point because it makes me think about the customer journey and how people feel about this sort of thing.
Everyone wants to feel, when you're purchasing really anything and you have to purchase that through an individual, I think you want to feel, I think we take safety in numbers.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yep.
if we feel like you understand what I'm going through, you've helped other people with this exact problem,
Yeah.
and you're not telling me, no, we really do, but I'm just going to need you to imagine it, then where's that word demo coming into play, right? If we have to say imagine, why are we even showing a demo?
I know demo means demonstration. So you would think that you're going to show something, right? Not the imagine if.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and what you should be showing is a practical use case for how they will practically use whatever your solution is based on what they told you.
Mm-hmm.
And I think demo experience platforms, why revenue enablement specifically should consider them, because I hear a lot of people in sales engineering
Oh,
talking
yes.
about them.
Mhm.
And I think there's a place for that as well when we're talking about custom work. That's an interesting topic. But I think revenue enablement should own what happens before custom demonstrations, which is let's handle our top personas and make sure that the person on the other end of the line feels comfort in numbers, even if you haven't described any numbers, by
Mhm.
saying, well, if they have this, they must be doing this for a lot of people. And it's true. So I think as it relates to our business, everyone who may have thought prior to a demo experience platform that we cater to a different industry or a different company size probably didn't realize that we are industry agnostic and company size agnostic.
Mhm.
And now I don't think at the moment, at the drop of a hat, we can tweak and adjust the numbers in a way that makes everyone say, okay, this could be for me for sure.
Yeah. So is that kind of your approach to solving the problem of, not showing the right data? Do you think it's mostly about numbers, or what kind of made you pick demo stack, to help solve these problems?
It's numbers, and then if you want to peel the onion just one level deeper, it's the stories that those numbers tell. So right out of the gate, if you see numbers that are representative of, let's say you're a mid-market style company and you're considering a solution like ours for, let's call it your salespeople,
Mhm.
right? You probably, a mid-market company sales unit probably somewhere between like 70 to 200 salespeople.
Mhm.
and you just see this huge data, you might say, okay, not for me. We talked about that already, right?
Yeah.
But let's say you get past that initial thing, which is this them putting up a blocker to say, I'm not going to listen. That's
Mhm.
not where the sale ends, just getting that one blocker down. From there, the data needs to tell stories that typically correspond with what people who come to your business from that field are normally trying to do and see. What's really interesting about our product, and the part of our product that I am the most excited about, is that we actually have unprecedented data. To the best of my knowledge, the type of data that we possess doesn't exist anywhere else. And I love being able to show my customers things that they didn't know about their business, right?
Yeah,
I need
exactly.
to be able, in the demo capacity, to paint some illustrations of what other customers have found that they didn't know that was really interesting, that might have pivoted their strategy or approach. But of course, we could never show production data of any kind to anyone. So we want to take interesting stories that we know about, make them relevant and show them to the relevant people, bring them into a demo environment without, we would never even broach the idea of asking someone for permission. We would just say, imagine. and now we're able to say, imagine if you saw that, wouldn't that be thought provoking for you? Yeah, well, many of our customers do. And this is just simply an example and a simulation of what you could find. But we wanted you to be able to see it yourself because we think that could be really valuable. There's probably so many secrets to your business that you don't know about that we can expose. And once
Mhm.
I show them an example of what I mean by that, like, for example, we noticed that all the users are supposed to click this button before they process an order, and we noticed that only 10% do. What would you do if you saw that? Now, because they've seen a real example, instead of me using my words, their imagination goes wild with what else that dashboard could fill up with once they become a customer.
Yeah, and you get a lot of information and they get more excited, and it's almost like they can resonate with the message because what they're seeing makes sense and it all ties together in that story and it promotes value so early. Yeah.
Totally right.
How has it impacted your sales motion in terms of, using Demo Stack, a demo experience platform? There's a lot of ways I can imagine, but I'd love to hear more from you on what's actually happening.
Yeah. So it plays a role, and it plays a critical role, but it's not the end all and be all. It is so important for initial demonstrations, as I hate to beat a dead horse here, but it's so important to make sure that someone can start to see, okay, I'm putting the pieces together here before they get into the deep. And I think that can happen on probably 3, 4, maybe even 5 engagements. And then in our particular sales motion, we are very, very proud of our product and its usability and its power. So we really appreciate the opportunity to work with prospective customers and get them to actually use the product. Now, when you start to use the product, it's a bunch of zeros until you actually start putting it to use, right?
Exactly.
So it's
Yep.
so important to not just give them an analytical tool or something through the form of a guided workshop where we're experimenting and playing with data, creating custom reports, et cetera, with information and numbers that are either zeros or completely irrelevant to their business until they have first seen the possibility of what it could do for their business several meetings before.
Mhm.
So what we like to do is ensure that all of our customers know they're looking at nothing more than a simulation of our production product. But there is, if anything, it's understated. Our actual product does more than we have provisioned our demo experience product to do. And then when we're ready to show that power and let people touch and feel the product, at that point we move into production. But how many times would we not get to production if we weren't first able to paint a picture?
That's a pretty big question. And I definitely think that people seeing it and understanding, even at a high level, because obviously it's not the exact same as production, there's far more in terms of data and functionality, but just getting their feet wet a little bit earlier, they start to think about it more and how it will actually impact and solve challenges. So it kind of pivots from this, to your point, imagine if conversation, or they're thinking about what their issues and pain points and challenges are today and kind of confused about how they're going to solve that. They're actually seeing it, and then that kind of drives them towards the production experience so much faster, I would assume, as well.
Yeah. I think imagination is far more powerful than we as B2B professionals sometimes give it credit for.
So true.
I met with an individual today, no names, but this individual told me just a fabulous story about how several years ago, he was encouraged by one of his mentors to call a CEO and say, hey, I understand there's an award for the top salesperson at the end of the year. I just want to let you know I'll be picking it up on this date and at this exact time. And once that person said that and imagined that, as you would imagine, the story ends with that person, it came to fruition, right? Because they put it out there, they really thought it, they really envisioned it in their mind's eye, and they made it happen. That same type of dynamic that we do for personal goals in our life is absolutely true of a buyer's dynamic, because buyers only buy things for a couple of reasons: to make money, save money, or mitigate risk. So you want to help them understand, can you help them make money, save money, or mitigate risk in the future? And they need to imagine that future.
I think this also kind of makes me think about confidence as well. Just that story alone made me think all about confidence. Do you think that a demo environment like this would help build confidence amongst people that are now showing product earlier with the tool?
Without question. I mean, the first time that you went bowling, did you have the bumpers up or did you have the gutters open?
Oh, definitely bumpers.
Yeah.
Definitely. Sometimes still, not gonna lie.
It's so important to be able to feel good about yourself, feel positive. And when you talking about very, very powerful, I mean, it's just the enterprise SaaS world is just exploding. And I give everyone credit. I think every product that I see a demonstration of, I think is great. I want them all. Now, we're not budgeted for them all, but I want them all because they're all great. They're there for a reason. They have funding for a reason, right? The problem is, when you're new to those technologies, you might be a great people person, a great salesperson, a great consultant, but you can easily start to question yourself and your own abilities because you don't understand the intricacies of that product, or you're afraid, like, do I click this one? And is this going to do the right thing? And it's not that the product is bad. It's just that you might be 2 months into the job. You're highly qualified to talk to someone from your patch or region, but you don't come across as good as possible because you're not bumper bowling. You're bowling for the first time and the gutters are open. I think the confidence that someone who's onboarding to an organization can have from knowing that you are using something that is a true simulation of our product down to the last detail. That said, it's controlled so that you can't make mistakes with it. And you can only say the things that we know the person on the other line actually cares about. I'm going to go with a lot more confidence into that first demonstration when I'm a brand new employee.
Exactly. It just changes the tone, because when you fumble around, I've definitely been in that position of guardrails off, clicking around, and clicked on something I had no idea what it did and went into some admin view at one of my previous companies. That's not even a main selling point of the product for me. So, I immediately panicked, and this was early on in my sales career. So it was one of those things where if I had guardrails or more enablement around the product and how I should have been talking to that persona, I think it would have definitely helped. Lo and behold, we didn't win that deal, but it's okay. We've learned.
Guilty of that one myself, too many times.
Yeah. What tactics have been the most successful to enable your team with better demos?
What tactics have been successful to enable better demos? I think listening to the field is important. I really think that's important. We have gotten some feedback from the field about some things that they'd like to see tweaked or adjusted based on their experience with their customers. Little things, like one of the things that our technology is very equipped at doing is measuring how long business processes take. On third-party applications, which is data that's seldom available to people. And a lot of organizations fly blind and just think, I don't know how long it takes someone to enter in a lead. I wish I did, but I don't. And what we have found in production is oftentimes that these things are even longer when our clients are actual clients. Maybe someone says, probably 20 minutes. Like, we find out oftentimes it's way longer than that. Like, pretty crazy. So people might say, if you listen to the field, hey, our actual customers 20 minutes might sound bad, and we should highlight to prospective customers, what if it was 20 minutes? Like, wouldn't you prefer if it's 5? Shouldn't it be 5? But the industry data, the data that we're seeing from our customers is actually revealing that it's actually more like 35. So maybe we should make our demonstration reflect that. Unfortunately, it's actually more like 35 minutes, which is really quite bad. What happens there is when people feel like they're involved in the process, and I know that demo experience platforms can be used where you can give them to the individual reps, or you could have a more gated experience. I've opted for the latter. But when you make people, even when the gated experience, when you make people feel a part of the process and bring them into the process and value their feedback, they're even 10 times more excited to use what you've created. And that comes across on phone calls.
Yeah, I think so. It's, people want to also have a little bit of their opinion, especially when it relates to buying and exploring software. They want their opinion and their thoughts and their challenges and all the things that they're feeling to be heard. And so if you can then reflect that in product, it's almost like magic, to sound corny, but it's one of those things where you can really just drive the message home without using words, which we're so used to doing.
Yeah, listening to the feedback from the people that are actually going to have to use the technology and not brushing it under the carpet, but instead saying, I value your feedback. I'm not going to take an immediate action right now, unless it's something that is just blatantly obvious, like a typographical error, for example. But instead saying, listen, I'm actually going to keep a tally, though, of other people giving me this same feedback. And if we start to see, economies of scale, for lack of a better term, of like people saying this is really kind of bothersome, making sure you change it only helps everyone feel better about the project that you're engaging in. Because a demo experience project, like anything that's worth your time, takes time. And you want to make sure that that value that you're able, the valuable solution you're able to make is only as good as people's willingness to use it. So keeping anyone who's considering a demo experience platform, listen to the field. And write down what they're saying. Keep that stored somewhere and adjust as needed.
Yeah, that's the biggest piece too, is flexibility and the ability to change things up based on what you're hearing. So that would be a key thing that I think about when I'm thinking about changing demos and just altering the methods that I have in place today.
Absolutely.
What tips would you give other sales enablement leaders when it comes to the demo?
I think I'm very lucky to have the ability to influence such a thing at our organization. Now, I come from the field. I was an individual salesperson, and I've led many sales teams at my particular organization. So I've had a slightly different path to the revenue enablement role than some folks. Folks come from all different walks of life and end up in revenue enablement. And I think that those folks sometimes their opinions aren't solicited by other groups for what should our demo entail and what kind of story should we tell. Instead, some of you listening to this might relate. They feel slightly more relegated to generic product training, right? Teaching about the tools that the reps use, like here's how we created opportunities and here's how we close out order forms, and very day-to-day focused. That said, the tips I would give to revenue enablement leaders is have the confidence to raise your hand and say you want to be a part of the strategic discussion, which is what we say and show on phone calls. And I hope that many of you on this call are already realizing that experience. And if you haven't yet, and you're focused more on day-to-day style training, recognize that no one probably connects to the field more than you do. Frontline managers connect to the field through the lens of their team, their region, their specific pod. If you're in revenue enablement, more likely than not, you are onboarding and connected to the onboarding of nearly everyone that joins the organization. And then they feel safe and comfortable with you, so they have questions and they share things and they're vulnerable with you. The feedback that you're getting from the field is unprecedented in your organization, and you're highly qualified to opine on what should be in the demo.
I love that. I think that would be so helpful. I'm thinking about it too from the perspective of me being enabled by revenue enablement. And it would be so awesome if we had this type of guidance, early on, especially I think about sales folks and coming in as a new hire to an organization. And having this experience and being able to understand with the product what can be shown and the use cases and the stories that you're supposed to tell, it's so much easier to digest and hone in on the message properly than, what I've been exposed to, which is mostly the PowerPoint trainings and, a lot of vision and a lot of just text that I have to look at and then imagine when I'm going through the product. Hence my, clicking out of order and doing kind of the wrong thing the first few times.
You just said something that I hadn't even thought about as it relates to demo experience and some of the value that I could see from the demo experience category. And that is getting out of PowerPoints. I have seen a lot of thought leadership based in science and psychology, if you can believe it or not, about how PowerPoint presentations, basically our brain starts to really tune out. Now, why are we in them so often? It's probably because people see no better alternative to showing a product in a controlled way at scale, right? So if you put it in presenter mode and you press next arrow, these things are going to show and they're going to animate in this way. And a lot of SaaS companies use slides to show their product and how it works. And it's probably because they want to make sure that the right message is getting out. So in many ways, a demo experience tool, even if you wanted to use it in an early going instead of slides, and then you get to production demoing later, could be a really nice alternative where you're not putting someone to sleep with slides because they feel like they're seeing the product, so they're excited. So that's an interesting thing I hadn't thought about.
Yeah. Well, we learn something new every day. I'm thinking about it like that, but I think this has been great. Thank you so much for all of the insight. This has been very helpful. I've definitely taken away quite a few of the points that you've made and want to kind of practice what you're preaching here. So thank you so much. Any final thoughts before we wrap things up?
I just would love to thank everyone for the opportunity to be here to talk about my experience in revenue enablement and how demo experiences fit in. And I just want to encourage everyone to have that confidence to say that if you've been doing what you've been doing for a while and you're connected to a lot of successful people in the field, and you also know where people have gone wrong in the field, you should definitely have a seat at the table when it comes to formulating demo strategy. So go make that a reality for yourself.
I love it. Thanks so much. Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Thank you. See ya.